TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now joining me on the show, of course, is our co-host Gary Groob, and our guest today is Oliver Marty. He grew up in Richmond, British Columbia, Canada, an avid hockey and lacrosse player. Marty played junior A hockey with the Penticton Knights and the Richmond Sockeyes, then part of the British Columbia Hockey League. Marty was a member of Brown University men's lacrosse team for from 91 to 93, where he set NCAA Division I men's lacrosse records, including the NCAA tournament record for most goals scored in a game, and currently ranks fifth all-time in average goals per game. He was a two-time All-American, All-Ivy, and also All-Academic, All-American. And in 2019, important to us, Marty founded the CT College Box Lacrosse League, CTCBLL as it was known, as the third U.S. state member of U.S. Box Lacrosse's National Collegiate Box Series. I am winded. It's your turn now, Oliver. Tell us how you got into lacrosse.
Just ended with that. That sounded great.
I was interviewing a CFL coach. He came up with a good dissertation.
You always want to leave on a good note. Really, I hope you guys can hear me all right. Not to be stereotypical, but
awesome, you're great.
I wanted to play pro hockey. Growing up in Canada, was really kind of my dream, and what I would play in the summers was lacrosse in order to really keep myself in shape physically. The games are somewhat similar, and that's really how I started playing lacrosse at a very young age, 4 or 5 years old, and as time progressed and had gotten to the point where hockey wasn't going to be, or the NHL wasn't going to be a dream come true. Looking at academics and lacrosse really started to take over.
We can do 2 shows. We probably do 3. We could do one about your lacrosse world, and then one about your finance world and what it was like to be the son of a great cook. I mean,
yeah, that's probably the most interesting one.
There are so many things we can talk about. So let's go to lacrosse for now. And you give us how you got involved. Now I'm going to turn Gary on you, so be careful.
Now, you said you want to do hockey first. What changed you over that lacrosse became your main idea that this is where you wanted to go?
Well, as my hockey career was moving along, you kind of get to see where your talents are. Probably the most clear situation that occurred. I had I was playing junior A with Sockeyes, and a scout from Cornell was there who we had been corresponding, and we met after the game and discussed a number of things. He kind of simply, gave me the good news and bad news. And he said, the bad news, Oliver, is we don't really have a spot for you. And I said, what is the good news? And he said, our coach, Richie Moran, knows who you are and thinks that you really would be a huge asset to their team. And that's when I really started to think about lacrosse as the alternative. So it was nice that I had someone there that active on what my ability was and where I could go with hockey, and as a result started thinking more about lacrosse.
My goodness. So that means the game picked you in a way.
In a way, and it was nice. I'd always loved, playing lacrosse, and there's obviously a point where it's not just to get in shape, and I played with some great players, and lacrosse, box lacrosse. I never played field; it was always box lacrosse. Had really been growing heavily. A lot of great players at that time. College considered for many of the Canadian players at the time. Only Gary, Tommy Marichuk really, were recent players that had played. You had, Mike French and some other greats that had gone down, but there wasn't a lot of that. So for me, box lacrosse started to become a avenue for which I truly enjoyed playing for national championships, and it became much more than just trying to stay in shape for hockey.
Box lacrosse in the U.S. and in colleges, I guess you were on the leading edge of that because, it was all about field lacrosse.
In the U.S.,
yeah,
all about field lacrosse, and in Canada, home one summer from Brown, and just driving by a field, and there were field lacrosse nets, and I just thought to myself, there's sport in Canada because there's so many strong players, and sure enough, where we are today, it's blossomed, and Canada as a nation, when playing in the World Field Games, is one of the top two, and obviously has beaten Canada a few times. I know the U.S. a few times. I know when I played with Team Canada in '94 in Manchester, we struggled. I think we finished third, but it was very disappointing losing to Australia. And Canada has really come full circle with their athletes, and in being able to really understand the delicacy, if you will, of playing box and the stick skills with the athleticism required in the field game. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of parity between the U.S. And the Canadian players in both games.
Gary, he referred to box lacrosse as a delicacy.
That
was interesting. No, it's a word I've never thought of associated with box lacrosse. I would have thought burned or charred on both sides.
Yeah. Well, it's from growing up in a French restaurant.
Yeah, I hear you.
So there we go.
And good for you. No, all kidding aside, you're a bit of your life in lacrosse is a bit enigmatic, because when you go to the U.S., it's about field lacrosse. When you're in Canada, it's about box lacrosse. You go from Canada to the U.S., pick up field lacrosse, bring it back to Canada, and then did you not do something with college box lacrosse?
Yeah. So essentially, after I graduated from Brown, I again, like I said, I continued to play professionally with New York. With the Canadian national team, but there came a point for me where it just wasn't financially possible for me to continue playing. At the same time, I had taken an opportunity in New York in the financial sector, and so it became very hard for me. So I ended up leaving lacrosse for a number of years. I had was playing with the New Westminster Salmon Bellies senior A team, and I had to give that up as well back home in British Columbia, and focus on a career. And so during that time, I certainly helped out in the youth programming in field lacrosse, and really tried to help give back as much as I could. But it was hard given the time commitments. And so as those eased up later on in my career, I started getting more involved, and really thought there was a huge opportunity that was being missed for U.S. players to know the game of box lacrosse, play the game, love the game, and really increase their skill level. And so I reached out to U.S. Boxla, which was really at the forefront of trying to develop box lacrosse in the U.S. in the right way. Run by Matt Brown out of University of Denver, and Shaden Santos, both of those guys who had played growing up in Canada as well as in the NLL. and really tried to figure out a way to help grow box lacrosse in the East Coast. And so after a few years of working in the youth programming with a great program, Superstar Lacrosse and Roy Colsey, decided that it was important to offer a collegiate league so that these players that were developing through the youth programming in box lacrosse then had something to continue playing afterwards as they potentially thought about potentially a career in the NLL. And
Where were you doing this
so
specifically? Location?
it's in we're doing it in Albany right now, but where it's starting slow. But where I started it was in Connecticut to I think at the time that be the third league state added to the what is called the National Collegiate Box Series, or NCBS, which is the collegiate league, or if you were to use the terminology in Canada, equivalent to Junior A, but in the States. And then since you've had the Upstate Lacrosse League has also joined, as well as California.
Yeah, because in Canada, we don't have the same kind of alumni help that you do in the U.S. How much help did you get from the alumni? Because I know the lacrosse players, the alumni is very strong in the U.S., the college alumni.
Again, you reach out to the folks I do think it's still very early days for box lacrosse. I think there's a lot of leading edge individuals that figured it out, and some very high level lacrosse coaches, such as Tierney and Starzia and others. But it's taken a little time to grow, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Again, another segment maybe for why it's taking so long. But I was fortunate to be in an area I think that has really become a stronghold for lacrosse in the Fairfield County area. And so I reached out to my colleagues around this area, guys like Andy Towers, who you may know, who I went to school with, obviously at Brown, and is coached at Dartmouth, and now currently, coach of the Chaos in the PLL. Jamie Hanford, who has really helped grow the game through a club program called Eclipse. He went to Loyola, and then he played in both the outdoor and indoor professional leagues, and others, Mike Regan, and a couple of guys I had played with, Brian O'Keefe. You may know Mac O'Keefe, his son now, but I played with Brian in New York. And so we really had a good group, and all of them had played box, indoor lacrosse, and really wanted to see it grow. And I think that was really important, to have really good coaching that could then really transfer that information they have to these kids. It's great to have good, coaching, but box is very specific, and it was great to see their development, especially in the first year.
Now, you went to Brown University. What had you choose Brown? Because it's not like now where we would research it and do different things. We're talking about the 80s, yeah. 90s, so obviously there wasn't internet happening. So what made you choose Brown?
It's such a great question, because there wasn't any of that, and so it was really after that conversation that I mentioned with the Cornell scout that I started thinking, well, maybe I'm going to be going to college. And it's funny, because the way I think is, well, hang on, maybe if I go to college, play lacrosse, I'll walk on to the hockey team and I'll make it. And so I was keeping that glimmer of hope there. Literally, it was going to the library, going to the local university, and going to the career center and getting numbers and names for admissions, and having to call and send letters and put together a resume, a lacrosse resume, and that's how it was. It was painstaking, and ultimately, I was fortunate. There were a number of schools that were interested, and eventually I narrowed it down to Cornell and Brown. And after visiting and doing those things, I ended up selecting Brown for a number of reasons. Both great coaches at both programs, both great schools. For me, one, Brown had a stronger program at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to play for a championship. And two, I felt that I had never played field, so I needed someone that would, give me some room to develop. And I felt be able to do that at Brown, and that's exactly what happened. So I think I made a great choice. I don't think I could have gone wrong with Cornell. What a great group! I have so many guys that I know from Cornell, just super people. But I was very fortunate, I think, to be able to have those opportunities. Not many Canadian players, hockey or lacrosse, were all that aware of, the process and how it works. And so I got some good support from, my family and friends and from these individuals at these schools that helped me walk through the entire process. We had no money, and scholarships really aren't available, so a lot of financial aid and things of that nature. But that's how I got to Brown.
But you took full advantage of it too, right? The double major in economics, business.
I did not fool around. I loved it, actually. I'm kind of one of these guys who loves learning, loves academics, loves sports, loves to get involved. And Brown is it's so open in terms of your options. A lot of kids today, they're going to college, and they really don't know what they want to do. There's a tremendous amount of stress, and the advice to kids is not to specialize too early. So much changing, and one of the differences with the options I had when looking at those two schools, when Cornell had a phenomenal hotel program, and my parents definitely were pushing for that, being in the hospitality business.
Sure.
But the ability to really find what I wanted to do at Brown and their curriculum really helped me, and so definitely took full advantage of it, and both on and on the field and off the field. So.
Yeah, because what stood out to me when I was reading up was the Jocelyn Award. Talk a little bit about that, because that actually sums it up in a nutshell of all the other things you did there.
Yeah, it's a pretty special award. It's they don't have it's basically trying to look at those individuals in the senior class that really embodied everything about Brown, from the academic side of it to your involvement, giving back to the community, helping, basically leaving Brown a better place. And like you said, taking full advantage of it. And you had to be sponsored by somebody. And one of the deans of the school, who I'd worked with, had said, "I'd love to nominate you for this." And I was shocked. I never think of myself as anything very special. And I sat in a room with 5 other individuals who won it. And these are the guys and gals that, go on to change the world. So it was very humbling, and a very special moment for me. I don't know if I've won a bigger award, if you will, in being recognized for that. So I definitely wanted to take full advantage, and I did. And the only advice I'd give to my daughter or my kids, or my daughter or my sons, is to take full advantage when you're at school, whether you get an award or not. It's such a special time. So the Jocelyn Award has a special place for me.
So you come out of Brown, and now you're working on Wall Street, but at the same time you're drafted to Mill. You got the Canadian field team. How do you juggle all of this? Because I know Wall Street alone is going to take up a good chunk of your time, especially coming just into it, right?
Yeah, it was. You're right on it, Gary. It was a busy time. It was a little bit eye opening. I was in New York City. It's a big city. I had taken a job with a firm that had at the time it was kind of the economy coming out of a recession, and we worked tremendously. It was understaffed as they were starting to hire back up. Period of work time. I lost my mother a year earlier, and still struggling a little bit with that. I think that hit me pretty hard, and so I was dealing with a lot of things at the time, and time was not on my side in terms of availability, and it's one of the reasons, unfortunately, I had to give up playing lacrosse after my second year, and it was a lot of work. It was a tremendous amount of work. I would love to say it was, the Big Apple and living the life and being a pro athlete and making money and all that good stuff. It really wasn't. It was a lot of hard work, and once I was involved in the finance world, there was still the decision of, what's next? Where am I going? I knew I love finance. I love numbers. But still had an idea of where I was going to go in terms of a career and what I wanted to do and where I wanted to do it. So still a lot of decisions that had to be made. And I think from my father and my mother and my parents, really kind of the idea was just to work hard and see where things fall. And that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about the Mill League, because you did have a couple of years in there. Drafted to the Saints. It's funny because I actually have footage of some of the games of the Saints because Bill Fox, during the lockdown, had seen that I was putting up a lot of retro games, and he gave me a good chunk of his collection.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so there's some really interesting games in there. Watching guys like you, Sal Acasio, Steve Kisslinger, Mark Mellon, another former guest of ours. Let's talk about that because a lot of the guys who've come on, Darius Kilgore, talked about the Mill League as the Wild West. And when you take a look at the game now and the game back then, pretty much it was pretty much anything went. Dallas, Elliott,
Yeah. Well, Dallas, Dallas and I are friends and played against each other. And he seemed to always come out on top. My 1 year with the Salmon Bellies, we were able to beat them to go to the Mann Cup against Brampton. But he always seemed to be on top, and yeah, he always shows some footage here or there. So it's fun. It was the Wild West. I think to compare the league, in Canada, equivalent to the Pro League or the Mill at the time was the senior lacrosse, senior A lacrosse. Mm-hmm. Today, the WLA and the Major Series lacrosse in the East. So I would say in Canada, the game, but very physical, much more than it is today. I would say in Mill, it was less skilled, much more athleticism. They added the music to the games and the entertainment. And so, like you said, anything kind of went. And you still had, I would say, less. It was physical, but also, you had more than today, more fighting and what have you. But there were some just great players, that were, like you said, Mark Millen, and we had Charlie Lockwood and the Sombrado brothers. I mean, just some great players that were some of the best field lacrosse athletes out there, and so you can imagine the game was very fast, much more so than in Canada. Today, the game is just leaps and bounds above those periods. The athletes are far better, and equipment helps. but being in shape the way they are, making it a profession. Like I said, I had to really give up lacrosse because I really couldn't make a living versus what I was doing in on Wall Street. And today the game now affords many opportunities for players to make lacrosse a career. And I think it's only getting better. It's much more refined. It's quicker. It's faster. It's less physical, but not in the way that you would think. It's still very demanding, and you get a pounding. But the game is much more fluid. I compare it to NHL hockey then and now, where if you remember, back in the 90s, let's say, hockey, there was a lot of clutching. You were allowed to hook players, you're allowed to hold players. It was a physical, a physical game. You had the Tydomies and the Probert. It was a tough game. A lot of clutching and grabbing. They changed a lot of those rules. And then what you started to see was the game accelerate in speed. You couldn't hook guys as much, and the Europeans who were finesse skaters, they started becoming a bigger part of the NHL. And if you watch the NHL today, it's so fast and special to watch because you don't have a lot of that. I think the NLL is very similar. It's so fast, great stick skills, everything's happening at a elite level. They still have the entertainment in the games, some music and everything else, but the game is, you watch the game more for the game as opposed to just the entertainment value, if you will, Gary, like you were mentioning back in the 90s in the mill.
Right. So we'll fast forward a little bit here, and you founded Akira Capital. Now you were settled there, and you had a chance to give back to the lacrosse world, and that you did in huge amounts. You started an investment company to invest in the growth of lacrosse, 1188 LLC, and you became a major investor in the PLL. Let's talk about that a little bit. What Paul Rabel and Mike Rabel have done to revolutionize field.
Yeah, I mean, again, the game always makes these jumps, which you had the club lacrosse back in the day, with Nyack and Green Turtle and Mount Washington, right? Just some of the best players, and it took somebody to say, hey, let's go to the next level, and you had the MLL created. Actually, it was a touring based pro league at the time before they then expanded, but again, it takes time for a lot of these things, right? You got to develop, you got to get fans, you got to get money. The players have to have the time. And again, it still wasn't a lot of money, and it didn't allow players the opportunity to really just make it a career. And you can imagine that in any pro sport, if you're only dedicating half your time to it or a quarter of your time because you have, other things that are that you need to do, mostly work, it makes it harder to train and focus as much as you'd like, as opposed to, if you took a look at an NFL athlete or NHL athlete, it's really 24/7. It's their life. But eventually you get there. And I think what Paul and Mike saw was an opportunity to take the progress that was being made and make it even better, bring it to the next level, make the game a touch more exciting, shorter field, shot clock. And I think that is what was an exciting idea, and really being able to pay athletes more money so that they can, as I mentioned, dedicate them more. And so I was excited about that opportunity. I actually I got introduced to a colleague in the hedge fund, is a partner of mine as well with the Alden Firewolves, and it was, Brett Jefferson, and we sat down to have a meeting. I said, "Hey, you want to get together? I want to talk to you about something." And I was going to talk to him about an NLL franchise. And when I was sitting with him, he threw a deck across the table about the PLL, and I was reading. I was so.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the athletes really appreciate the increased awareness that they've been given the opportunity to, and that they've given back in the sport to highlight the beauty of the game. And I think people have been very excited watching these programs get to the next level. Lacrosse has still been after the big four sports, right? You're going to have your soccers and et cetera going down the line. I think lacrosse is right there, and so being able to profile it the way it has been through the both the leadership at the PLL as well as the backers who have really helped grow the game. Brett was at Syracuse as a goalie. Josiah obviously at Yale. And the list goes on of those that were are backers of it, and really seeing this game go to the next level, and I think that's a tribute to what Paul and Mike have done.
Right.
The whole concept of lacrosse, it's becoming. I'm speaking to an investment guy. I can't believe that. It's been an easy investment for a lot of people in lacrosse. The NLL has really strengthened their owners. The PL is moving. They're paying players. There's a lot of progress going there from multiple directions, which to me is it's interesting in the sense that it's not linear, right? It's a broad based elevation of the game financially as well.
And yeah, and I think what the biggest interest is from the financial standpoint, is understanding the value that sports franchises have been able to create. And when you go back and you look at various different asset classes, the stock market, bonds, real estate, things of that nature, sports investing has actually been one of the most successful returns over the last 30, 40 years, and one of the most stable. And you're seeing that really starting to flourish over the last 10 years in terms of investors, and that's both in men's and women's pro sports. And the consumer, there's consumers that they want these sports, and they don't have to be your traditional sports. They're esports, they're X Games and extreme sports and things of that nature. And so I think it's a new area of investment that pension funds and institutions are starting to really understand does fit into their portfolios, as opposed to the traditional private equity, real estate, equities, bonds, things of that nature. Sports actually plays a role there, and I think you're going to continue to see that growing.
I believe I invented a term right now in my head listening to you. The beauty of franchises, which we've learned over the years, is they have a thing what I'll call trickle around economics. Wherever they build a stadium, there's a trickle effect everywhere around it. And I think a lot of communities are beginning to understand that, which is why it's easier for you investors to basically have a partner in a community, because it isn't just about people going to the arena to watch the games.
Hang on, I think that term's been used.
Has it? Has it?
Well, what was it? What's the movie? Field of
Not
Dreams?
trickle. Oh, really?
Isn't if you build it, they will come? I mean.
Oh yeah, that term. Yeah. No. The term I was referring to is trickle around. I was making a Ronald Reagan joke. Stop
it was trickle down economics.
Exactly.
I got it.
Exactly. That's why I said new. Trickle around economics.
Yeah. You're so right. Sports is entertainment, just like everything else, just like your iPhone phone and video games and everything else. Your teams on Broadway. It's entertainment and some are have a lot of vertical history with their franchises. The Montreal Canadiens and the team. And in some of the other newer, let's call it pro sports, there's different models. NASCAR, WWE. There's always a consumer that has a different interest than others, and when you look at these stadiums that have been built, it's quite a it's an entertainment zone. People want to kite out, if you will. They want to be entertained. They want to see great sports and competition. Everyone loves competition, it's kind of one of the things I tried to do. I locally, in my little world of lacrosse, one of the areas I saw that needed that there was a need of was for facilities for box lacrosse. In the winter, the vast majority of all these are ice, and that ice often stays year round. And then in the summer, unfortunately, most folks in the U.S. are playing field lacrosse. So I really saw a need for that people could play box lacrosse. I tell you, I spent 5 years and had been in contract with a number of locations and facilities, and or another. It was very difficult, and they fell through. But it's something that I if you try and look and book arenas now, very difficult. There's so many sports, youth, women's, men, all the way up. But world in sports management and talking about investments, as I was earlier, that's part of it as well. It's just the value of a sports franchise, but it's fields, it's complexes, it's the whole gamut of opportunities that provide a return to those that are investing. Just because people want to go out and play sports, from youth all the way up, from girls to boys. And that's not going to stop. So build it and then they will come. Or in Frank's terms, trickle around.
Trickle around.
Well, the other thing that needs to be understood, and as an investment guy, I can check with you. The other thing that sports have an advantage of is live entertainment. Streaming's awesome, but it's live entertainment, which, I'm not saying you have captive audiences, but you have portability where event takes place. We've talked a lot of the stuff we've just talked about, and you've mentioned, we've heard this before on the show. And the other thing is you have like lacrosse leagues that travel, and so live entertainment is something that can't be paused. It can't be watched later. You have to watch it right then and there. And that's the economic strength of live sports, where with advertisers, you don't zoom past the commercials during live entertainment.
100%. And it's the whole deal. And it's often not cheap to nowadays, right? If you want to go to an NHL game, or you want to go to a NFL game, you're dropping a couple $100 easy on not just tickets, but when you're there, you want to get the hot dog and the beer, and you want to enjoy it with your kid, and you want to you buy a jersey and what have you. So it's an experience, but nowadays, everyone's paying that much, if not, paying much more for their iPhone technology, streaming apps and everything else. And so but when you're there, it's different. My boys were granted I'm not sure if you heard of the of Make-A-Wish, which grants wishes. So my boys were granted wishes, and one of my kids was we had bought them race cars and go-karts and stuff, and so he was a huge Dale Earnhardt fan, and so Make-A-Wish is just a phenomenal foundation, and they took us down to the raceway down in Charlotte, and we got to watch a race. And one of the things that my son remembers the most was how, where we were sitting, how every time the cars came by, you felt that, and that's like other sports. You're there, you can feel it, and that's my experience to fans. Unfortunately, COVID hurt that, but we're getting back to normal here. So I think you're going to see more people wanting to continue to go out and enjoy that experience.
If people have just joined us, we're talking to Oliver Marty. Oliver Marty is a former field lacrosse player, a champion in the Ivy Leagues, and an investor, and a guy that's deeply rooted in lacrosse. We're having a really interesting conversation. I think it comes down to the business of lacrosse. Right now, we're talking about. Gary, you want to ask another question, and then when after yours, I'd like to talk about the emotional side of lacrosse.
Sure. My question is, you bought the Albany Firewolves. Well, at that time it was the New England Black Wolves. What made you do this? You obviously didn't get up one morning and say, "I need an NLL franchise." What was the process in coming into that?
Yeah, I think it was still part of the idea of investing in the game and where the game is. Every investment, though, has to be looked at on its own merit. And if you had asked me, 10 years ago to invest in the NLL, I wouldn't have done it. I didn't think it was there. It essentially through a relationship actually with the Connecticut Box League, I was speaking with the New England Black Wolves as they wanted to build and grow and so I built a relationship with one of the owners there. I had been interested and had reached out to Nick Sakavich, the commissioner, this was a couple of years earlier, just inquiring, kind of kicking the tires, and so that there were a few seeds being when New England did that, they wanted to go in a different direction. They had created a really strong program, and as some of you may know, it was some of the ownership from the Philadelphia Wings that had relocated. So a real good group of owners and a team that was really doing well. And so someone had reached out. Was when New England was making that decision and asked if I had an interest, and initially my thought was let me take a look. That was basically it. There's a lot that goes into it, and from not just the financial side of it, but from the logistics of the organization, the location, the economics, the league and its strength and everything else. And so I had to do a tremendous amount of work and had to find individuals that I felt, were high quality partners and that they shared a lot of the same love for the game. And so, it's not just hey, I was looking for a franchise and I want to be a pro sports owner. That really wasn't my interest. It was more from the perspective of I love box lacrosse, I love indoor lacrosse, and I liked where the league was positioned. And I liked when I look at the development of box lacrosse in the U.S. I see a huge pipeline of development going on. And, when you think about the fact that 75% roughly of the players in the NLL are Canadian now, When you think about the fact that there is no box or indoor, there isn't a significant or hadn't been a significant development of youth box lacrosse, and you still had these fans coming out to these games, really suggests to me that this game's just going to grow exponentially as youth development continues, and want to see the game and want to play the game. And so there was a number of factors that still had to be fit into place to decide if you had all these different pieces that worked. And it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. And at the end of the day, it made sense to go forward. And so that's what we did.
How helpful was it? Sakevich and company in the NLL, they had a process. They developed a process. We talked about here how, he didn't do much the first year or so. He sat in the back working, looking towards how to make this league stronger. Gary likes to say that it's probably one of the only leagues that expanded during COVID. And I agree with him. And then there's the issue of making owners comfortable with the partners that are in it. As an investment person, that your success is dependent on the people you work with. How important was that you saw some of the ways and means that the league was being run, and how helpful they were being to owners in giving them a template and understanding what they need to do to be successful?
I think you hit on a really critical point of why the NLL had really found strong roots since Nick's joined, right? You always need to have strong leadership who can bring a vision together. And what Nick did is find a way to work with the teams and say, how do we make this better? What needs to be done? And a lot of that had to do with understanding the ownerships that were in place and being able to grow those high quality ownership groups. The other was to put better infrastructure in place. A couple of years after he had joined, he hired Jessica Berman, who came on board, and from there built out their staff. And I think that's always important. And again, one leads the other. As you have more success here, more dollars come in, you can then grow. But I think the understanding of having very strong owners, I think, was a critical component. The second component is understanding that each franchise is successful. And if you go back, to the days that of the earlier days in the mill and the growth there, it was very difficult for owners to own a franchise because they didn't share in any of the economics of the arena. And so the rent was very, very high, and they weren't sharing in some of the revenue streams. And it made it very difficult. So hence why you had very low salaries for pro athletes. Well, because, these owners were losing a lot of money because it's very hard to offset those costs, especially when you're not bringing in a good group of ownership of revenue streams. And so again, then you have this circular where you can't get the best athletes, you can't get the best coaches because you don't have that money. And eventually, one of the things I thought was really smart from the front office, from Nick, was to really engage those that own arenas in North America, to work with them to say, hey, you have an arena, we have a sports team, there's a good relationship here. We'd like to work with you in terms of figuring out the right revenue streams. And so they did, in a way, Frank, as you said, provide a working together relationship, some blueprints. And it was one of the first questions I asked, is I said, look, I don't own an arena. the economics really don't work unless you have a good relationship with your arena where it's a win-win. And it was good to hear and understand the perspective of the NLL, going back a year and a half, and that was an important decision for me. And when you look at New England, right, they had a great setup too, because they were able to bring in fans, and the fans would gamble, and so there's the arena is a critical component of any deal in pro sports, and I thought their focus, the NLL and Nick's focus on that was brilliant. Again, just bringing organizational structure, bringing committees that could really leverage off of the owners and their knowledge base, whether they own pro hockey teams or basketball teams or what have you. And so I could see a good growth profile and development from both the league side of it, from the grassroots side of it, and a lot of potential to come. And again, that was a big part of it. And I think, like Gary said, I think we added 2 or 3 teams with New York, Fort Worth, and Las Vegas, something like that within the past 3 or so years. So very good job in terms of bringing in those really strong owners.
Also bringing in the TV contracts now. He's given you guys as owners more revenue streams, using Fanatics also to sell merch. There's all kinds of different things. When Sakavitz was on the show, he put down, the old style was you throw a carpet down, open the doors, and hope for the best. Now, as owners, you have many other little streams in there to get your investments back.
100% and more, right? There's sports betting as well. There's L Unites, Jessica Berman, really pushed that. All those things are integral to developing and being in the community, to representatives of your area. Your community wants to feel a part of, and then being able to have those other revenue streams as well is very important. The obviously time you can work with a great company like ESPN and TSN, it is always a way to show the product you have to the world, and that was a very great opportunity, most importantly because we were coming out of COVID, and we the NLL hadn't really shown much for a little over a year and a half. So it was difficult to really show what we could offer, because we didn't have any play for a year and a half. So again, hats off to Nick and others involved in the NLL with some of the teams that really made it a collaborative effort to bring that to fruition, and now it's up to us to really put a great product together, and that's what we're trying to do.
It helps that it's very watchable now too, HD and all the rest of it. Some of the streams that we used to get were terrible, absolutely horrible. But as it's come along,
well, I'll tell you, our Joe Feld, one of our he is our director of production and broadcast. He's just brilliant. He's great. And one of the things that we did different this year, based on his recommendation, was centralized production, and so that helps create a seamless integration of all the different feeds you can have and utilize. That it really helps you bring it to your market. That's really important. It helps for sports betting, but it helps for bringing a unified product to the market, and really one face, if you will. And it's for us been, I think, extremely successful. And of course, having the production done by some of the best producers in the game, and at a centralized location, I thought has been very beneficial. And like you said, I completely agree, Gary. When you watch the game, you watch NFL, you watch NHL, right? and even the PLL, right? That how you make that, what you present to the audience is critical. And I think I can't agree with you more that the product that you get to watch on TV is very high quality, and it's exciting. And there's more to do. There's more to add to that and make it better. But than it was over the
Sure.
the days when I played. It was well, you've seen it. It's a lot.
We're gonna have to leave it there, Gary. I'll give you a minute to say goodbye to our guest.
I really appreciate you taking the time with us. It's been educational. It's been terrific talking with you. I wish you all the success in the world. I know you guys are fighting for a playoff spot this weekend. All the best of luck. And if you need us for anything, please feel free to reach out to us.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, we got a big game this Saturday. The league has so much parity now, and again, that's part of the growth and bringing in the best players. They played very well this year. Interestingly enough, many of their players from the Chaos, have been playing, whereas the players that have just been in the NLL didn't play. And you probably at the beginning of the year you saw a lot of rust, if you will, as players worked off some of those cobwebs from not playing for a year and a half. So it's going to be exciting, and thank you for the well wishes and having me on. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure having you on. I mean, there's a whole couple other shows we can do.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Anytime,
really,
Frank.
We really do appreciate you being here. For
My
our
pleasure.
guest,
Thank
Oliver Marty, thanks for sharing his perspective on what's cooking in lacrosse and how he's invested in the game. I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. Thanks for watching NNL Lacrosse.
See what you did.
See live Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with special time today. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For lacrosse talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next week.